Welcome back to Hannah's Harvest. Well, here in Arkansas, and I know around most of the country in the world, we are in the middle of a huge heat wave. And when it's really hot outside is the perfect time for me to think about my indoor houseplants. As much as I love gardening and growing food and flowers, I actually have really struggled with indoor plants. So today I'm going to show you the 3 types of indoor plants that I have, talk to you a little bit about care, and then hopefully it'll give you some insight if you're struggling with houseplants on a type of plant that might work well for you. These are my favorite houseplants, and I love them really for 3 main reasons. The first reason is that pothos are super easy. When they need water, they'll get wilty and sad looking, you water them, and that's it. They don't need a lot of fertilizer, they don't need a specific schedule. You can truly look at the plant to see what it needs, give it water, and it'll continue on. Another reason that I love them is they can handle a wide variety of light situations. So I have one that's hanging in a window, getting a lot of bright indirect light. I have this one on my kitchen island where it doesn't get hardly any light at all, and they're all equally happy. It works really well for me because I don't have a lot of bright indirect light for houseplants, and I've found it hard for other plants to be happy, but my pothos will be happy in whatever situation I put them in. I even have one where it's not getting any direct light at all, and it's still doing really well. Something else I love about pothos is that you can propagate them. So if you have a pothos that is getting too big or a little bit unruly, you can cut off the extra branches and then dunk them in water for a couple weeks, and once they develop roots, they're ready to plant. So pothos is kind of like that friendship bread. It's the kind of plant that I can take cuttings, reroot, and then gift or save some for myself. So I bought this pothos at the store as well as this one and my hanging basket. But this one I created completely from propagating cuttings. So every couple weeks I'm adding more to make it more full and beautiful, but that's just a pretty neat thing about pothos. They're a perfect plant for somebody who's busy, doesn't have a lot of time to think about plants. They grow like crazy, and as long as you water them when they're thirsty, they'll be happy. Pothos are so easy because they tell you when they need water. When my leaves on my pothos look like they're wilty and sad, then I'll give it a nice good soak. I also like to take that time to pick off any yellow or dying leaves and just make sure the plant looks nice. So I'll soak it all the way until there's a lot of water running out the bottom. And it's really important for pothos to have a pot with a drainage hole because they don't like their roots to be wet. I think I water these pothos about every 2 weeks, but seriously, I just wait until they look like they're thirsty and then give them a drink, and that's all they need. For my pothos that's in a hanging planter, after I soak it through, I make sure to pour out any excess water, because this pot has an attached tray. It's not as easy for the water to drain out, so I just dump it out while it's in the sink, and then I'll hang it back in its spot. This is my fiddle leaf fig. It was actually a gift, and I've had it for a couple months now. I have tried and failed with figs before, and they're a little bit more difficult than other houseplants that I've had. What's tricky about them is they like to have their soil moist, but if it's too moist, they get unhappy. So I've been watering this one every week, The container it's in doesn't have a drainage hole, so what I do is carefully lift it out in its plastic pot. I fill about a half an inch of water in the ceramic pot and I let it soak it up from the bottom, and it seems to be staying pretty happy. It's putting on new growth, so that's a good sign. I also have this placed in the brightest area in my house. It needs a lot of light to be happy. Definitely not a beginner plant, and it's definitely more fiddly than what I would normally choose, but it's really pretty and I'm happy with it so far. These are my succulents, and I've also tucked in a cactus with this arrangement, and I really struggle with succulents and cactuses. Cactuses are a little bit easier for me since you can water them so infrequently and just forget about them, but I struggle with the balance with succulents between watering them enough and overwatering, and typically what I do is keep them alive long enough for my sister to be willing to rescue them. She's awesome with succulents and houseplants, and for me the struggle is that in the summer when I'm gardening and spending so much time outside, I don't have time to think about babying my houseplants, and they tend to be out of sight, out of mind. And then on days like today when it's really hot, almost too hot to go outside, or in the winter time when I'm wanting something green, I take better care of them then, but throughout the summer they normally just struggle along until I can find a time to take better care of them. So if you can get the hang of when to water and how frequently to water, they really aren't that difficult. But another thing that I don't love about succulents is they don't put on growth very fast. They can look the same for years, and I like to see plants that change and grow and develop. So they're not my favorite, but these are really pretty and I'm trying to keep them alive the best I can. Every month or so, I assess the situation of my succulents and cactuses, and the first most important step is removing any dead leaves. So I haven't watered this one frequently enough, I don't think, because there are a lot of leaves that are dried up, so I'm just going to go through and pick off the dead leaves. It's not ideal to touch succulents because, as you'll notice, some of mine have that matte film that gives them a really pretty dimension, and if you touch it, it gets rubbed off. But I really can't stand dead leaves just being at the base of the plants, so it's a risk I'm going to have to take. After I got my succulents all cleaned up, I decided it was a good time to do a little transplanting. So I wanted to move this little succulent over and add in a cactus that I have that was just in its nursery pot all by itself. Now I'm going to give these a really deep soak. I like to water my succulents about once a month. I find that if I water any more than that, I have trouble with flies that will lay eggs in the soil that's moist. So I like to let it get really dry in between waterings, and when I do water, I give it a nice deep soak. Thanks for watching.